Okay, hello. Q&A.
Joining us now is Jonny von Wallström, the director of the Guldägget.
Where do you find inspiration to continually create? Alberto Bass. This is a funny thing to answer, actually, because you don't want to hear this, but the way that most people that are professional in some way, they're creating all the time. The way that they continue to create is by just working and not thinking so much. There is, to me at least, no inspiration. Like, okay, you can be inspired to do stuff, or you can, be pointed in the right direction, but you're not gonna be creating if you don't just like set up systems for yourself. For instance, okay, I get up at this time, I do that then, and then I do that, and then I do that. So just like planning out your life and going to work and just doing it, that's the way you stay productive, pretty much. It hasn't to do with, inspiration at all for me. It has only to do with consistency and staying active all the time, because as soon as you get off track, it takes a long time to get back. You can look at it as, if you, for instance, compare it to working out. When you start to work out, it sucks. But then when you get into it, it starts to get fun. And that's exactly the same with creative work. And the hardest thing is starting. Like, that's always the biggest issue, that people think so much before they start that it becomes so tense in order to just sit down and work. And the easiest way to get over that is just to sit down, start working, and then you kind of forget about the whole issue of not getting anywhere. Because once you start to edit, for instance, like I get up in the morning at like 5 a.m. I go down to my studio and then I sit and I edit, and that's the time when I get the least, like nobody calls me at that time, so I don't get any distractions, so I can just stay focused until maybe 9, and then shit start to happen, and emails, phone calls, all that stuff. And I try to avoid that in my productive time. So that's how I stay inspired too, because as long as you create, you put stuff out there, you get reactions from people, and then you think it's fun to continue doing stuff. And if you don't put stuff out there, you can't get any feedback, and you can't think that things are fun, because you're just sitting in your head thinking about things instead of doing them. At least that is my opinion on inspiration. And of course I get inspired by, for instance, watching a great film that might make it so that I want to create a film that's as good, or maybe that inspired me to think a certain way, but that's not gonna get me to do anything about it. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people don't understand, is that inspiration has nothing to do with creation. Yeah. At least that is my opinion. Let me just get this control room up. Second question I got is, and this is a fun one, because I actually have an answer that is something I've answered before, but Noah Kane asked, currently I'm in film school, but everything that I'm learning is stuff that I have learned on my own from the internet. I'm considering taking a year off to produce my own independent doc and to do film internship, or a film internship or two. What are your thoughts on this? Will I make more connections and get better experience? Definitely, if you do it. So this whole thing is dependent on you actually doing what you say you're gonna do, and nobody knows if you're gonna do it but you. If you can go out and you can make your independent documentary, there's no film school that will ever teach you as much as making one film. One feature film, going through the whole process of releasing it in a film festival circuit, doing that whole thing, like trying to sell it to TV, trying to get it funded, all that. None of it will ever be, you know, close to something you can learn in film school. And I know that maybe film school teachers will say that you can learn that in film school, but no, you can't, because there's so much changing, there's so much adaptation going on from like, okay, I get a no from this angle, okay, so then I need to approach it in a different way. You always need to be like changing the way you work. And film school learns you, or they teach you one way to do it. And there's not one way, there's like a million ways of doing it. So definitely, if you make a documentary, that will teach you more. And then, as you mentioned, like doing a film internship is a great way to build contacts. I think that's the way people should do it. They should make stuff, and then they should have the type of either internship or like an assistant type of job where you can get a lot of inspiration from others and connections. Video is freezing up. Okay, let me just restart. And restart. Freaking live stream. Always with this stream. I think it's not a good thing that I pre-stream, but then it always is more people turning up when I do, so it's kind of a catch-22. So, is the audio working now better? Let me know. Otherwise I have to restart the whole thing, but this is the quick way of doing it. Yeah, so my thought is that if you can assist someone, you can actually learn a lot of stuff from that person. But the biggest thing is probably that you can get a network and you can get out there and understand how the industry works, because it probably takes like 5 or even 10 years for you to get established in like any industry before you get like well-paid jobs and that sort of thing. And if you go that route, that will happen quicker than if you go the route of just like starting your own production company after you finish film school, doing your films but not really networking. And it takes a lot of time. It's quicker today, but audio is still cutting. This is weird. Okay, so let me restart the whole thing then. Maybe I should lower the... Let me see. I can probably change something in these settings too. Live. No broadcast. There. Advanced settings. Okay, let's see. Low latency, ultra low latency, normal latency. Okay, I can't do it while it's started, maybe. This sucks. Okay, so let me just stop for a second. How is the audio now? Damn it. Freaking live stream. Let me know if it works now. I actually didn't manage to change anything, so I just restarted it again. Seems like I have to stop the whole stream and everything, or the event, if it's gonna work. But it says health is good, so let me know if it's good or if it's bad. Damn it. Great. Okay, perfect. Damn it. I hate live streams, but it's kind of nice to be speaking to you like this. There was actually a question I wanted to ask, but I forgot about it. What was it? I gotta think about that. Still cutting out. This is so annoying. Fucking YouTube. Okay. I can't actually change anything. So, do you think I should stop the whole event? Because otherwise I can't change the settings for the latency, it seems. Or do you know if I can? Then let me know about that. For me it's perfect. Okay, so it's probably depending on where you are then. I'll just continue, and then if a lot of people are experiencing the same thing, I will probably change everything. But I actually lowered the quality today, so do you notice any difference? Strong to zoom cut again. And can it be the limiter? No. Let me see if I can change the audio to be lower quality while it's playing. Not sure. I can. So this might work. Video bitrate. Okay. Yeah, so the weird thing is that I've set this one. Okay, now it's not streaming because I changed things, so it should just fix it. YouTube is not everything. Okay, now it should be good. So thing is, I changed the settings on the encoder to be lower, but somehow it says that it's still streaming the same bitrate. So probably I have to change something within YouTube live streaming thing in order for it to work. Just to refresh our pages. Yeah, try refreshing, see if that helps. But it's probably freezed now because I changed the settings on the encoder, I would guess, because it said it was loading the settings. So if it works now, we're fine. Perfect, okay. Good times. Anyway, just finishing up on that film school thing, just I think if you can do a documentary, that's better. So it's better to start making money, it's better to assisting, it's better to actually make films than going to film school. If you have a fancy type of film school, maybe that can be, you know, something on your resume, but in general it doesn't mean much. It's more about what you do than, you know, what you have on your resume. So for instance, in Sweden you have to have made like 2 feature films, documentaries, if you want to produce a documentary, and that's kind of hard if you're coming out of film school, so you're not going to have an advantage there, at least. So HLC Media asked earlier about color profiles in Canon 80D and C-Log. And if you should over-underexpose. Like the general rule of thumb is to overexpose, and as Dark Horse says, without clipping. So the way you can do that is to use, for instance, the zebra levels. So if you can just, you can probably Google that about like the ADD and the C-Log, what levels it clips at. So for instance, with the GH5, it's around 75%. So you set, for instance, in the GH5, the zebra on like 55%, which is good for like Caucasian skin tones, and then you have one on 75, which is where it clips if you use the V-Log. So if you have those, you can just switch in between, and you can see, okay, so now I have the skin tones right, and then you see that that's like around 55%, like the clippings of the skin tones. So the brightest skin tones should be around like 55 Caucasian. But then on the clipping side, you have zebras at like 75%, and then you can see like, okay, this is too much. So Canon doesn't have it. Well, I think you should be good if you use the Magic Lantern firmware. Does that work with the ADD? It should, right? are you doing this stream with GH5? How are you doing so far with that camera? Actually, this is the C300, and that's just because it has SDI and it has XLR inputs, so it's just easier to use, and it also has like the better low light. Now this is like 320 ISO, so that wouldn't really have mattered, but it also has better autofocus. That wouldn't be possible with a GH5. I love the GH5 though, really good, but horrible autofocus. Especially when it's low light, it can't really find a face. There's no chance ever to find a face. Or you could, you know, jump around and then maybe it's gonna find you eventually, but probably not. It's probably the worst autofocus system that has ever existed. So, next question. Hey Johnny, Dark Horse asks, I shot my first concert with 3 cameras, Sony AX100, GH4 and GH5. I also had a buddy shooting with his Canon 5D Mark III. Footage looks amazing, but there's a ton of it. Instead of one long video, I'm going to divide it into individual songs for YouTube. Would you suggest renaming all the clips to first make it easier to find before taking into Final Cut Pro? No, I wouldn't. I would probably just use the Final Cut Pro tools that are for the metadata. That's really a good way of organizing it in Final Cut. You have so that you can batch rename, for instance, the display names, so you can both do that, but you can also kind of keyword. So let's say you have this camera here, you name what that camera is, and then you put that in the metadata in the camera, I guess, type, or what camera it is. If it's a camera, what's the name? If you do that, and then if you use keywords to organizing it instead, you can use the, I think it's also smart folders there, to kind of organize everything. So you have like a camera, all the clips that are tagged with that goes into that one, and it's easier to find that way. But I wouldn't rename it before, because it just, yeah, you have to do it all over again in the program, and I would never do it. Other people probably log like that, but I think it's a waste of time. Yeah. Congrats to 39k subscribers. Thank you. Finally, like this past, I don't know, probably 3 months, it's been so slow. That's why also we're going up to like 5 a week, because it's too slow. Can't really deal with it being this slow, because we went from like 4k to 40k in a couple of months, and then it's just gone downhill from there. And now I think we're probably at the same space in terms of new subscribers like we were last year, as I remember. I don't know, so it's kind of frustrating, but 5 times a week would probably help, and the new documentary will also probably help. No post. Dark Horse says no more posts from you about not needing new gear. Had to slam the laptop closed before my wife read it. Yeah, I think that like getting new gear, it's fantastic when you can, but it's better to make stuff. So if you can focus on making stuff, that's better. Magic Lantern is not released yet for the ADD. That kind of sucks, because I think it's so annoying with Canon that they, I mean, I love Canon, but I also hate them. So especially because they're limiting the most obvious functions in their cameras. And that, I mean, it's super frustrating. When I used the 5Ds, because I had the Mark II and Mark III, I always was annoyed with how little you can do in terms of like the proper video functions. And then when I got the Magic Lantern firmware, the camera became like, okay, I don't need a new camera now. So I shot the whole Pearl of Africa and the Confused African with the 5D Mark III. And I didn't feel like I needed a new camera until I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or something, when I was starting a new project. Freezing up bad and cutting out. Damn it. So I'm guessing the only solution is to restart the whole stream. Let me just copy the questions so that I have them, because I don't know what happens if it's gonna disappear. So let's just see. Okay, copy, paste, got it. So now I will press stop streaming and probably it will disappear. And now stream options. Add a delay. Okay, should be live again. This really sucks. Let's see if anybody comes back. But I will continue answering the questions, and if people find their way in, I will start answering your questions again. Because I have a lot lined up here, so let me know how it works now. Let's see. Where were we? We were... Lost Millennial. Well, how did you find your style of grading? All your videos look surreal. I think a lot of it had to do with me working as a still photographer, and I liked the type of matte black that a lot of still photographers use. For instance, this is a picture I took from Tahrir Square during the Arab Spring. Okay, yeah, there. So you can see, like, this has a really matte type of black, and for me, I find it like really pleasing, because you, I don't know, you get some type of different feeling when you watch images like that. So that's part of what I like, and I think a big inspiration for me was Martina Hugland Ivanov, which is a really good stills photographer, and she has a matte type of look and a really dark, moody one. So I think that kind of inspired me to work like that and try to recreate it within film, because I used to take that type of pictures that kind of reminds you of the analog days maybe. But then, yeah, that kind of transitioned into, you know, what it is today. But it took a long time for me to kind of nail that look. And I think if I look at the early vlogs, they look very different, in my opinion, than it looks like today. So I think I'm getting closer and closer to what I'm after. But it's also changing because I try new things. I try different types of grades, or like, okay, so for a while I go with a little bit more contrast and then a little less, and yeah, back and forth. And you get better with using the whole like the DaVinci Resolve tools. It takes a long time for you to master it, and once you start to handle, for instance, one aspect of it, like color balancing, which, you know, can be really easy, but it can also be really complicated in certain areas. So I still can't kind of color balance all the images I do. So sometimes you have to compromise, and you have type of, I don't know, a way of doing it that maybe isn't as traditional as maybe a schooled colorist would do. So I don't know, that entices the look in a way too. But I love the color grading aspect of like telling stories with colors. I hate like when you try to use color in a too obvious way to tell stories. For instance, if you make it blue, it should be, you know, cold, and then when it's really warm, it's really romantic. I don't buy into that at all. I think it has more to do with, you know, the camera movement and maybe the amount of light, or like how you move with the subjects and that sort of thing. So in my opinion, you know, it's more about putting the people that are watching in a world that's consistent, and the grading is a big part of doing that. So that's actually why I like it so much, because you can create a consistent story world. Okay, so Lena Lauren asks, any advice on treatment and grant writing? I find it difficult to do those for my personal doc when I don't know where the story is going to go. Also, any tips on self-shooting in terms of best equipment to use besides a phone, sound, and best practices during filming? I think in terms of writing treatments and synopsis and that sort of thing, I think it's very important, or it's probably crucial if you want to apply for grants, that you learn those things. And even though you don't have the story, even though you don't even believe this is going to be the story, you have to be able to write a good synopsis that is like crafted in a professional way, which means that you have to have a dramaturgy and a whole conflict and resolution and all that in mind. When I applied for grants for the Pearl of Africa, wonder what was the first synopsis? I think it circled around a gay couple that fled to Sweden, and they met each other here. Maybe that wasn't even the first one. Maybe there was one. Actually, there was one before that. So there was one make-believe version of it, which was basically, I don't know if you've seen Michael Winterbottom's, what's it called? New World something? A New World? Something like that. It's a fiction film, but it's told in a really documentary style, and they went with amateur actors on a real type of refugee journey from, I guess, Afghanistan. I think it's Afghanistan, and then to the UK, I think. So they went on this whole journey, or it's Pakistan, I'm not sure, but they go on that whole journey and follow along these characters that are amateurs, but it becomes so intense because it's real, but it's, you know, fiction. And that's really what I was writing the first synopsis around, that concept of going with a refugee to Sweden, or wherever it would take place. I'm not sure it was Sweden, but so the first was make-believe, just a make-up character. I don't know, even remember the name or anything like that. Just to have a setting that would be a story that would be strong enough for people to take on the project. And that got me into a program where I could develop the first synopsis. And the first synopsis was about a gay couple that fled Uganda to Sweden. Two guys. And then I started doing the whole research with them. I had started this workshop. It would be like 3 weeks divided in like 6 months or something. And in the middle of all that, one of the characters didn't want to be in the film because he was too afraid of what would happen to his family back in Uganda. So I had to kind of stop that project, because I didn't feel like, even though the story was amazing, I couldn't continue making it. I had to find a different character. So then that synopsis went away, and I had to go to Uganda to figure out what is the story. And then eventually it became a transgender love story. But you know, that whole thing changed during the process. But you really have to be able to write a concept in the beginning that is has a dramaturgy that you can follow when you shoot, that has a story that you can follow when you shoot, even though it's gonna change. because everybody knows it's going to change, but you still have to have one way to kind of focus towards in order to apply for funding. And then you could also try to, there are professional grant writers out there, try to get their input on stuff. You can also go to film festivals. They usually have these kind of lab workshop things where you can get input, so they can help out to give you a lot of input on your treatment and synopsis and how you should approach things. And then also ask the people that you want to apply from. That's often the best way, for us at least, to kind of talk to them. And then self-shooting, I think get a camera that is the best one that you can afford. Get good audio, which is basically the least you should do is to get a wireless microphone, like a wireless lavalier microphone, and then to have a small backup audio on your camera, which could be like a small like Sennheiser or Rode mic, but I don't like them, but still it's the least you should do, because audio will just be horrible if you don't do it. And then shoot in a way that's custom to what equipment you have. If you can't, for instance, afford good enough audio gear so you can record two people talking, don't expect to shoot two people talking. Make the story in a perspective that doesn't demand that you can record two people if you only have one microphone. That's how I would approach it, at least, because it's kind of hard otherwise. Because always when you do small time independent films, the only asset you have is what you got, right? So you have to kind of approach every project from that. If you can do that, then you can always finish your film. If you never see like an end to it, like without funding, then it's probably not gonna end up well. It's probably gonna stop in the middle or something because you didn't get funded. So kind of approach it in a way that's okay, so I can afford this. Maybe I have to shoot it in 2 years' time on vacation for 2 weeks at a time or 1 week at a time. So set those like barriers and then make sure that you go and you shoot in those times. Or maybe you have a month. Okay, I take a month off, I shoot everything, and then maybe it takes a year or two to edit. But then let it take that time, and maybe then you can fund it too because you've put in a lot of time into it. So don't stress finishing it, I think. Huge subject, but that was some of the things. So let me see. Sound isn't great. Okay, so sorry for that. I will upload this because I don't want to stop again. I'm gonna upload this one in normal anyways, so if you can't bear with it, it's gonna be up soon anyways in high resolution. So have you ever needed to do film projects you didn't like or wasn't passionate about just in order to pay the bills? Always, every day. How long did you do that? I still do that. How did you mix that with what you're passionate about? I guess that's the balance. Like you have to think about, okay, so this is what I want to do, right? So, okay, I want to do feature films and I want to be able to sustain myself, and that's X amount of whatever money you have to work with or whatever you need to survive. So if you kind of can say what that is, so decide how much you're going to earn each year. Like, what do you want to earn? And don't be greedy, because that's just stupid. That's just a way to fail, basically. But still, you have to be able to survive off it, and you have to maybe save up money, and you have to pay for a kid or a house and all those things. And then kind of think about it, like how much time do you need to do that, and what type of project would it be? Like, start small if you can't afford more than a week, a year, or whatever. But that way of working, I feel, makes you kind of, hate yourself, because you can always like, okay, 1 week a year I can go and film what I really like, but the rest of the year I have to suffer and do all this shit. So it's not really a sustainable way, but if you're starting out, you need to kind of start small, I think. And making a doc can be a perfect way, like making a feature doc, because making a feature doc makes you kind of leap so much more forward than you do if you make a short film. But I have friends who's made short films and their whole career has popped off in just a couple of months, making like big commercials for big brands and making a lot of money just from doing that too. So it's not like it's not possible to do off of one short, but then you need to be really smart, and maybe you need to premiere on Vimeo staff picks, maybe you need to organize screening events for advertising execs, or whatever it is that you really think is your way forward. Like, I don't want to work with advertising, for instance, if I can't do the type of projects that I think is, you know, good, or that I at least can stand behind. Then I'm not interested in it, because I don't need the money. So it's not like, you know, I'm gonna go and work with a brand that I don't believe in. That's not gonna happen. I'm not that desperate. So certain people will be that desperate. I have been before. Then I had to do everything. And when you're in that place, you probably have to do anything that comes your way. But I think you should really try to avoid being in that situation. And that's something that you can do if you have a long-term plan. First step would probably be to save up a buffer so that you have, you know, money enough so you can say no to projects. First, maybe that is 3 months, then it's 6 months, then it's a year, and then that goes on. If you have that, then you have more of a safety to avoid being in that situation where you have to do everything. So that's one way of doing it, but having your own equipment has been another for me. Like, I can go and I can make films on the level that I want to make them because I own the equipment. If I didn't, then it would be a big step. Every time I wanted to go out and shoot a documentary, I would have had to have much more funding for it. Now I can just go make an advertising thing, and then I can actually take like a month off and then come back to advertising and make up for that month. But I mean, everybody's not in that situation, so I get that that's, you know, pretty hard if you're not there. But I mean, I wasn't there like 5 years ago even. I had to take a lot of different type of crappy stuff in order to survive, and in that position you have a hard time saving up money, and especially if you do freelancing for others, because what happens is that the people that produce, they make much more money than you. For instance, if you run around and you make like $300 as a DOP, then you are not well paid, and you are probably really crappy paid in comparison to people that are working in advertising that are, you know, famous DOPs, because they can probably get like $1,000 or $1,500 a day. So it's kind of weird to be in that situation. If you're there, then you probably have to hijack your own career in some way, and that's probably by doing passion projects, so that, you know, you get a hype and a personal brand that's better than where you're at now, so that you can get better paid. But it's hard to do that just by continuing to doing crappy work that you don't really want to show anyone. You really have to kind of go out and do projects that are the type of projects that you want to do, and that's probably doing it yourself without getting paid, for instance. There's so many of the successful directors that do everything for free. That is their career, basically. So everybody that makes music videos, that's always for free. Everything goes into the production. And the people that don't put it into production, they suffer, because that's how you kind of get other work. You get other advertising gigs off of that. Yeah. Dust35. Could you comment on the grade aesthetics of my video Estetisk Experiment 1? So let me see if I can find it. Now maybe I will break the stream just because I'm YouTubing, but we will see if I can find it. Would you say the GH5 Vlog is a needed investment? Do you use it? I always use it. I have shot pan natural profile for 2 years. Would it improve my end result? Not necessarily, I don't think. I think it's better, of course, if you're grading, but the thing is that I think that anything I've had from the Canon 5D Mark II days that are shot in neutral profile and that is correctly exposed and doesn't have a lot of noise. Maybe it's a little bit less sharp, but I can make it look pretty much the same as I can the C300 Mark II. It's not about so much about like the camera and everything, but it's more about like the artifacts that you might get, because you get more artifacts when you have a compressed signal and you have, for instance, all the shadows are crushed and you have, if you underexpose, for instance, you have no latitude of bringing that up. And that's what affects the most when you don't shoot in log mode, because log mode would kind of, it will compress the signal in order for you to then kind of bring it out and get more detail or less noise and still have detail, because you can probably get the same type of look either way. So is it worthwhile? I would say so for me, but I don't think it is that for everybody. If you're used to it and you're satisfied, I don't think you notice that big of a difference. I think maybe you'll suffer because you have to learn to grade for log if you do it. But of course, if you are confident that you can handle a log mode and all that, then for sure it's going to be better because you're going to get less noise. But it's not that obvious. Like it's a much bigger thing of shooting in, for instance, I rarely shoot actually in 4K, the 400 megabit setting. I usually shoot in 1080p, but then in 200 10-bit. And I'm satisfied with that. So it's not like you have to have like the highest all the time. I mean, 4K is a very uninteresting thing to me. I don't like to kind of reframe my images in post. That kind of takes away the point of being a DOP. Yeah. Have you cut on Avid Media Composer and do you like it? Only a little bit. It's an amazing program, but I just didn't have the patience to learn it. So since I grade so much, if I would have been an editor only, I would probably have jumped to Avid when I was leaving Final Cut a couple of years ago. But the reason why I ended up in Resolve is because I do so much grading and I gain much more from having such short kind of workflow process of going from like editing to grading and back and forth. So that's why I don't use it, but it's much better for making a long feature doc, for instance, because it can handle data much better. But it also is a different way of working because you do work like I do in Resolve, where you create optimized media for it to flow more efficiently. Like when you ingest video into Avid, you usually convert it because then it's super high performance. But all programs would be high performance if you converted it to proxy files. So it's kind of tricks you to be quicker than the other programs, I think. Wicked West Films. Hey bud, love your work. How would you recommend getting funding for projects other than applying from film councils? I haven't done this, but I know a lot of friends of mine who's worked with documentaries for a longer period of time. They've often gotten a lot of the development funding from private investors. So that could be some, I don't know if it's called mecenat in English, perhaps, but some type of art investor. Like they don't expect their money back more than like, okay, they want their money back and they're happy, but I don't think they invest in it because they think it's a good investment. I think it's more about supporting arts. If you can find that kind of rich person, then that is a good way. But that has a lot to do with, you know, having relationships with people. So if you have relationships with the rich people, then you shouldn't be afraid of asking them for supporting you. Because the thing with rich people is that they love the glamour and being at a film festival and being at this premiere. So if you can pitch that they can go to, yeah, so if you support this, you can go this and this to the premiere in Toronto or whatever it is, then they will love that. I think that's a lot of the film festivals, a lot of the people that support the film festivals financially. Of course they like films and all that, and they want to support art, but they of course love also to be part of this whole film festival and get, you know, to experience that whole thing, and yeah, and get to feel special within that field. So those great plays. And then I think I have a hard time with crowdfunding because it's so dependent on you having an audience and being able to build an audience. But if you are able to build an audience, crowdfunding is amazing. I think filmmakers should probably look at different ways of selling, you know, their knowledge and all that instead, because I usually fund my development funding by doing advertising, and that's much more efficient for me because it takes me, like, I have already a career, so I don't have to search for opportunities to do advertising stuff. There's always stuff coming in, and we're asked to do stuff, so we rather turn stuff down than the opposite. So for us, it's always easier to just say yes to one more job and then put that money into the film instead of kind of going the opposite way. And I think if you do that, it's easier to fund the film. So we did that with my new film for like a year. So let's say we put in like 20 grand into the film just for like expenses and traveling and all that. And we shot maybe for like three and a half weeks or something, and then we put some editing into the trailer, and like that's all it was. And then after that, we feel more comfortable because we've done that, we've shot it, we have the proper characters, we see how they tie together. Then it's easier to write a good application. So we try to fund that ourselves first, and then we go and apply. Hopefully we get funding, but you never know. And then you need to be ready for like the next steps after that either way. So we're still waiting. We've just applied, but it took us a year to kind of put the application together. So I think you should kind of think about it in that sense, that if you can fund the development phase yourself, because the way that funding works is that you're always after in terms of getting money in. So you always have to fund it first, then get money back, and then fund the next stage, get money back. That's kind of how it goes. Yeah. I actually got an invite to Amsterdam in June today to speak at some conference. I will let you know. I got a question asking when I will be in Amsterdam. Simon Barnes, hey, didn't think you'd answer the question looking for feedback since you're trying to move to 5 uploads a week. Thought about doing some feedback on other videos once a week. Would love some. Actually, maybe that could be a part of this too, this whole live Q&A session. That's probably something that could be interesting. And that reminds me that I was going to watch a film. Let me see if I can find it. What do you say? Should it be a separate video or should it be part of this live Q&A session, giving feedback? Maybe on 1 or 2, something. I can't find this video on Dust 35. Maybe here we go. Okay, now I might find it. Okay, I found it. Let me see. Question was grading, right? Aesthetics and grading. Okay, so if I screw up the live stream now because I'm watching this, you know what happened. It's actually loading, nothing is happening. This internet is screwing me up today. Okay, so I will probably answer you then on that video instead to give you feedback, because this will probably screw this up. So let's see, last question. Let me see, here we go. Do you think the new Mavic Air is a good investment for serving not just as a drone but also as a handheld gimbal for occasional outdoor shots? I'm just a poor student and hobby filmmaker. Like, I'm not sure, because I don't like the Mavic Pro so much, and the reason for that is that it has a very weird noise reduction algorithm. So if you reduce like the sharpness, it starts to do like noise reduction, so everything looks unnatural. So you have to have it more sharp than you would like, and that kind of creates, especially when you're flying, you get these lines everywhere. I'm not sure, I haven't seen enough of the footage. I've seen a lot of footage from the Mavic Air, but I haven't seen if that's the case. It's kind of hard to see, because everybody puts up like short clips and then cut to something else, and to compare it to that one and to that one, they can't just stick on one one shot and let it be. So you have time to kind of look at, okay, the houses, the lines, yeah, that annoys me, as you might have understood. So I think in a way, like, the Mavic is a perfect, amazing, but also you have really big limitations. But if you're a film student, poor hobby filmmaker, it should probably be enough for you. But don't expect it to maybe be so practical to go around with it as a gimbal. Maybe it can be for a while, but I think that battery life and all those things can be kind of annoying, and having like, okay, so you have that stabilizer, okay, so how are you gonna hold the phone? Those things are maybe kind of annoying. I don't know. Could be, at least. Okay, one more question. Giuseppe. Hey man, I've seen your video about making money with filmmaking. How could I earn money if I'm a film student, cinema engineering? If I'm a student, I don't know if you read film then, because I made that up. You're a student, cinema engineering. I don't really know if that is filmmaking or cinema engineering. Are you making cameras? Then probably make cameras. But if it's filmmaking, probably make films. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's really hard to make money if you don't have a career making films. I mean, you can always go out and do like wedding stuff and all those things, but to do it while you're a student is kind of hard. I would probably focus more on kind of investing in creating a YouTube channel if I was a student. I see a lot of like young filmmakers that are in like USC and that sort of thing that are doing that, and I think that's the super wisest decision you could ever make if you're a film student, to focus on building a YouTube career at the same time. But of course you're not going to make much money off of it until you do, and then you might quit film school because of it. So that would be one way of doing it. But otherwise, I mean, assisting is always the best way to start out, to kind of understand what you want to do. If you're in film school, don't really know what you want to do, then that's probably one way of figuring that out. Yeah, okay, so sorry for the very problematic live stream, but I will see you again, and I will hopefully have better connection. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.